Coming
How
out.
are you?
Scary.
This is
A lot
a
of people.
very special day here at Bowdoin. We are thrilled to be welcoming back to campus Abe Morell, class of 1971, and a Bowdoin honorand in 1997. Last summer, on a beautiful Maine summer day, Anne and I met with Abe and discussed the possibility of creating a new series of photographs on the theme of winter. Abe's retrospective, The Universe Next Door, which had been organized by the Art Institute of Chicago, was just winding up, with stops after Chicago at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles and the High Museum in Atlanta. Abe liked the idea of embarking on a new series and was intrigued by the idea of coming back to Maine and to Bowdoin to explore this topic. Abe's first working visit to Maine was in early January. And for those of you who remember this past winter, you will recall that December was quite mild. And so upon returning right after the new year, there was actually very little snow on the ground. And Abe joked, as he tends to do, that winter wasn't what it once was, certainly when he was a student. So, we encouraged him to be patient. And the 12 photographs that Abe is debuting tonight were created in Maine and Massachusetts over the last 4 months, and they exemplify the imaginative and thought-provoking work that Abe has been doing in photography for more than 40 years. I won't try to list his many accomplishments, though it's worth noting that his work has been exhibited and collected far and wide in this country and abroad. He's received numerous awards, including a Guggenheim Fellowship, and in 2011, he was the recipient of the Infinity Award, a prestigious prize designated by the International Center of Photography. Abe is a remarkably generous and kind individual and has influenced the careers of many aspiring artists, especially at the Massachusetts College of Art and Design, where he taught for 27 years before retiring in 2011. As we turn the program over to him, I want to acknowledge the contributions of several individuals who helped to realize this project. In particular, our profound thanks to Professors Jim Mullen and Mike Colster in the art department, and to Dana Bird in the art history department. And to first-year student Nevin Swanson, who helped Abe and his assistant Matt Cronin, who's here tonight as well, to scout locations, to carry equipment, to document several of the photographic sessions, and to generally be present while this work was happening. I also want to acknowledge, in helping to underwrite this project, we are very grateful from a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts and for a gift by Eric Silverman, Bowdoin class of 1985, and his wife, Svetlana. After Abe's talk this afternoon, we welcome everyone back to the museum for refreshments and to see the new exhibition that has been handsomely installed in the Shaw Rudnick Gallery in the museum's upper level. That said, please welcome Abe Morell.
By the way, I will need the lights down at some point, because this is more important than me. There's a saying in theater that, how does it go? It says, love the art in you, not you in the art. So I definitely follow that. And this can also come down a little bit. I know this, apparently this thing is being streamed, so whatever that means. First, I really do need to thank Anne and Frank Goodyear. They knew me from Adam, so so the proposal to make work in Maine in the winter, I I loved because I really like challenges a lot. More so as I'm getting older, it feels like, so what? I mean, it's okay to fail at a certain age, you know? It's charming, you know? So, but they did see a possibility that I had not, so I'm indebted to them, and I'm also indebted for the amazing work they've done in this museum. It really feels like it's a pleasure to go in there and see a really lively place, so thank you for your work. So, I'm going to be unusually biographical a little bit in my talk, and it's unusual because I don't usually talk about my background so much. But my thesis, as to 10 minutes ago, was that my growing up in Cuba, in this warm island, and then coming to Brunswick, it's almost like one of those particle accelerators where one thing hits another. And what happened, I think, is why I'm here. This amazing hybrid of energies and possibilities. So I'm indebted to Bowdoin for, first of all, taking me while I spoke no English, and for letting me play in a way that has become a kind of a lifelong thing. So unusually biographic, but again, bear with me. It's not my slide pictures. So that's me and my parents. Born in a beach town, so you know, life was perfect. My sister and me. The likelihood of this boy ending up here, I don't know, the odds are pretty small. Ending up in New York City as an exile with my parents. And it was a shock, but an exciting time for me. The idea of the United States, and especially New York, gave me this tickling feel of potential. Like you could basically do whatever you want. I mean, I still believe that people are mistreated in the world, and especially people who are not exactly in the traditional American sense Americans, but and I did encounter some of that, but I still kind of believe in the sense of the potential of becoming something in this country. So we ended up in New York City in '62, and this is some of the early pictures that I made there. Nothing to write home about, but it was this young boy with a small camera trying to sort of make sense of this new location. It felt like the beginning of a personality, arising. So our living room, mind you, this is 1962. Where was Arbus then? Yeah. No, it's very much like the work of Deanne Arbus, whose work I discovered a few years later, who became one of my heroines. I mean, she really changed my view of what photography was. My parents, this is not staged. This is where my father was a super, and in New York that means you take care of a building, except he took care of 5 buildings, including one that needed coal to heat the place. So it was like a Lewis Hine photograph, literally. But this is what we did. And again, well, the whole setting of New York was surreal and wonderful. This is our Thanksgiving dinner. It's sort of sad, I think, but my cousin, me, and my sister, and some kind of Cuban turkey, I guess. So I graduated from high school, and this is the boy I was in 1967. A nice boy. Then I got to Bowdoin, and it was, you know, not prepared at all. Took a bus with my roommate and arrived here and was like, okay. But not too long after that, I don't know how many years, but a few years later, this is what had happened. Yeah, I totally became infatuated with art and music. Elliot Schwartz, who's one of my professors in music, you know, I came to Brunswick listening to, no kidding, and not ironically either, listening to Lawrence Welk. I really thought, this is cool music, you know? And again, not like in the Brooklyn sense, you know? Yeah. I love Lawrence Welk. And of course, after a couple of years, I was listening to John Cage and John Coltrane, and people like Elliot really opened this world up for me. So that's me. People say hipsters dress like this now, so in Brooklyn. A guy named Mike Lasky, maybe he's here, if he's here. You are? Yeah, right here. You took that picture? Yeah. Oh my God, this was not set up, but and of course, wanted to turn the world upside down early on. So it was taking a course with this man on the left, John McKee, that really was the moment where I was going this direction, and after that I was going this direction. I took a photography course with John McKee, and I suddenly discovered that this thing, this medium, gave me some kind of voice. I truly felt it, and so much that I felt right away that I wanted to do this forever, you know. I didn't know how I was going to make a living, good thing too. But I was taken by John's way of teaching photography as part of music and art and humor and ways to think of art in multiple ways. So, and I think John is here somewhere, so thank you. So this is my first roll of pictures in Brunswick, Maine, and how weird that a calendar should be there. I mean, it still freaks me out that first roll had October 1969. It's just like, I loved it. It feels like, I mean, it's not the greatest picture, but it felt like how a calendar, a girl on a motorcycle, I made that. So that sense of having control, maybe is too harsh a word, but some kind of way of organizing the world in a way that was mine. It's an extraordinary feeling, and you know what I mean if you do this kind of work. So this is some of the early pictures that I made in John McKee's class. I know. The stranger, the better. This is in Topsom, I think. Portland. And of course, all these photographs are children and grandchildren of the people who I love. This is the work of Helen Lovett. It's extraordinary. I was copying Helen Lovett. I was copying Robert Frank and Cartier-Bresson. But these are the heroes that I really had in mind when I made pictures like this. This is an early picture of college. And one of the things, too, that this young Cuban boy meeting all these sort of great teachers in the setting here, I saw people in Brunswick. I walked in Brunswick a lot, making pictures, and I befriended many, many wonderful people, including some of these pictures. George, who was the cook at the Molten Union, I would get invited to their houses. And of course, this is another Arbus. Mrs. Tillotson? Yes, it is. She taught, her husband taught music at Bowdoin. I don't think she's alive. Oh, good. This man used to be the coach in the track team, not a coach, a judge. And he, on Thursdays, he would invite me to his house to have cocktails. Not a gay thing either, by the way. And I love this cop. In fact, I hear he got into trouble when I brought some pictures to the station to give to him, and his boss looked at them and said, I'm not sure that's what a cop's image should be. But I just love the idea of living in a place where it's my town. Month of Winter, again, grew out of this sense of having an idea become reality. And one of the things I love to do is look at hundreds of books, hundreds of pieces of art, things that I know, things that I don't know. And these are some of the works that I have been looking at for a long time that maybe to get me in training to come to Maine, but people who have influenced me in more than one ways. The Bruegel, wonderful picture, maybe one of the best paintings ever. But the idea of poverty, of he's got, I think, one fox, not a good hunt. Hartley. And Neil Welliver's paintings, which I adore. They're just, especially the winter pictures, they're so crystalline. Kiefer's landscapes, but especially the winter pictures, have this sort of desolation of historical proportions that I'm so jealous of, that a painting could tell so much about a history. And the Hokusai's prints, which are now infamous, you know, but they still look good. And Rockwell Kent, who I discovered at Bowdoin, we have several of his paintings here. And I really like his paintings very much. And in fact, when you go to the gallery, this is the color of the wall. I wanted to match Rockwell Kent's icy sky with the gallery. So whether you like it or not, that's how where it came. This wonderful scroll in 6 parts, which I borrow from in some ways. And Michael Mazur's, whose work I just, more and more as I make work that is more printmaking-like, the more I turn to him and to see what he made out of ink. This is from his Paradiso, the Dante's Inferno series. I'm actually thinking, since I cannot draw people at all, I'm thinking about doing an illustration of Dante's Hell, but without people. So it's going to be, it's called Hell Without People. So landscapes only with mood and all that, but no, like it's been closed. I'm serious about this. I'm actually working on that idea. And these wonderful drawings by Vijay Kelman's, just extraordinary. Thousands and thousands of little lines making a surface that is to die for. And Twombly, who I discovered later in my life. I thought, early on, I thought, this is bullshit. This is, I mean, anybody can do that. But as I get older, the more I appreciate his work, and especially these really misty, landscape-like things. And then this very strange printmaker. By the way, all the work in the show, it's sort of dedicated to David P. Becker, who is no longer with us, but very influential in my life. And early on, I think 1970, no, 68 or 69, he would show me his Piranesi and Rembrandts. And so the idea of printmaking has been sort of part of my lust. Anyway, I discovered this Hercules Segers, who was contemporary, or maybe younger than Rembrandt, but extraordinary landscapes, modern looking. We use color on the prints, so there's a kind of a feverish kind of feel to them, and surfaces had a kind of a weird raised feeling. It's like new stuff. So again, I've been looking at a lot of these great people, even Richard Serra, totally opposite, but I am jealous of people like Richard Serra who could take a piece of 20 by 20 foot thing and just put a black thing in it. It's so liberating. And so in this work that I've done for the show, I've tried to liberate myself a little bit. Some quotations. The title of the show comes from a Wallace Stevens poem, and this is from 13 Ways to Look at a Blackbird. I love the idea. It was evening all afternoon, it was snowing, and it was going to snow. It's like this tragedy. This thing is coming. Just in 2 lines, you can really fear this thing. And this wonderful Carlos Williams, all the complicated details of the attiring and the distilling are completed. And of course, she's referring to the birds. And this extraordinary man, Basho, who wrote sort of the greatest haikus around, where 3 lines can really suggest the feeling of being out there, like when I was 12 below in Bethel for me and my assistant, Matt. And then I had to include the work of Isa, who was a contemporary of Basho. But anyway, think about this. It's important as an artist to get it right. It's like, okay, what's your motive here? Try not to do shit about snow for the rich only. I'm saying that with my dealer here, so. These are some of the pictures in the show. One of the things that I tried to do for some of these photographs was to try to sort of make new attempts at making pictures. And this one came early, but it felt like it was not about composition or anything, but about a state of being, just a plane. And it's all sharp from here to there. And I really like the idea of this blankness with almost musical notations. In fact, I challenge Jorge, what's his last name? Lopez, to see if he could play this piece. I'm not kidding, though. I'm half kidding, but it's about the idea of the musicality in the landscape and a sense of nothing being something or things being nothing. So for me, this is, even though it's a very sort of quiet picture, it was very, very important to me. And of course, looking at a lot of Japanese works, how to make a bending tree feel like some gash on the film. And because I've been thinking a lot about printmaking, and you'll see a little bit of that later, I thought about maybe making prints on the snow. So a piece of plywood, put some branch on the snow, then press it like a printmaker might do, and then remove it. And I really like the residue of something. I mean, it's a philosophical picture for me because it's, when does a twig stop being a twig, almost an existential question of what survives. And I'm going to go back a little bit in my past. The idea of affecting surfaces, changing them, working them, remaking them, I think has been around forever in my work. So I want to show you some early work where I think I've been doing the same kinds of things. Like this early picture of a slide, but this is a million little asses that wore that metal down. That surface now is eloquent. The shadow of our house affecting the surface of that place. The first page from Tale of Two Cities, and I really do like the idea of not just the intellectual sense of words, but how physically they're laying on that page. I really wanted to get that sense of the surface being also a principal speaker. The paperness. This is not my picture, but this is in Venice, Salute. A man who has a really nice palazzo across the way wanted me to make a picture in his room. And of course, I affected the surface of that room dramatically. And in some other work that I've been doing lately with a tent, this, in a sense, is a portable camera obscura. Inside the tent, we have a very large periscope that goes out there and can look at the world and then throw it down on the ground. So inside there are two of us with a laptop, a camera looking down at the surface, and then this picture came out. But very much about the surface being reworked or reorchestrated to mean something else. In this case, to me, like a new version of Old Faithful. It feels like dirt is being thrown out into the landscape. Grand Canyon, it was windy that day. It was dangerous. We put that tent on the edge. And it reminded me, this work with a tent really loves Saul Steinberg. I mean, talk about someone who's elegant and precise and super smart with lines. To say that surface is not just the surface, it's doubt, it's duty, it's complicated. The ground is not just an everyday thing. It reminds one of being alive and what one is doing there. So I think this work reminds me of this sort of complicated triangulation of ideas. So this is the Grand Canyon on the rocks on the edge. On a rooftop in New York City, pebbly rooftop, looking east. This is a very weird project I did in West Texas, Big Bend National Park. I brought theater lights into the landscapes and a generator, so we would climb hills and project theatrical lights onto the landscape as it was, the end of the day to make these weird worlds. It was the strangest thing to be on the border almost with Mexico with these lights and, a generator, and we just hope, it's like, let's just hope the cops don't stop. But again, it's transforming what is known into a new version of it. This is a photogram, a large photogram. I've also been making those for a while, but the idea of that water becoming a new substance on that surface, a new creature of sorts. This is paper, Lisa and me. And of course, that surface has been compromised a lot. I've been working on Through the Looking Glass, and these are the beginnings of some ideas about Alice. but she's coming through the window, but it's water. Dollar bill. No disrespect. I love America. Been also working with pieces of illustrations to make a kind of a new illustration deep in below the surface of the page. So to create a kind of a palimpsest of surfaces acting together. And this is sort of a very large one out of Piranesi drawings. It's like a new Piranesi. And this is at Yale. I photographed at museums there for a while, and I wanted to do such things, mess with surfaces and the implications of what could be in front of all the surfaces. In this case, a beautiful head in front of a hopper. And if you notice, it's very close to the painting, and there were like 5 curators around me kind of looking at that. But I really wanted to make a kind of a new thing out of these two objects. So a Nettleman head and a hopper painting is now the Chirico, you know. It's just like what I do with the ground. This is at the Barnes Foundation, Barnes Museum, where I took a mirror into the galleries. There were also like 5 curators around me. I'm a professional, so. This is at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. It's a painting of flowers, but I made 20 different exposures of it, details of it, far, close, many of them, and then in the computer we put them all together in a kind of a chaotic way. So you get this bizarre thing out of control. But I love that sort of reworking of this Dutch still life. And this is in Georgia, where a mirror can, a glass can allude to things below and things above. Okay, now I'm going to end with the other stuff in the show that does have a different process. It involves cliché-verres, and it basically means a glass picture in French, cliché-verre. And one of the greatest makers of cliché-verres was Corot. Millet also made a bunch. But Corot would take a piece of glass, I don't know, any size, 8 by 10 say, darken it with ink, so it was pure black, and with a sharp object, basically scratch the surface and make a beautiful drawing, as he could. So that became a kind of a handmade negative. In fact, that is. But the curious thing is that these French painters decided that what they would do with this handmade negative was to make a photograph of it. So that negative was placed in a darkroom under a piece of photographic paper, exposed, and a photograph came out of it. So it's got a foot in each place. It's a photograph, it's a drawing. And that idea has really been of interest for me. These are some of the other. Security. Anyway, this is another Corot. I mean, they could actually draw. These people were, I mean, it's something I cannot do. These are all cliché-verres, including Paul Klee, a picture of his father. Gorgeous. Many of these glass pieces do not survive anymore. The results, the photographs, are in museums. And so it's with this kind of thing in mind that I thought about working on a project. It was a number of years ago, but the Museum of Modern Art every year pairs some artist with some writer or musician to make a book, a special edition book, maybe no more than 200 or 300. And my guy was Oliver Sacks. Okay, yeah, I'll take him. So he had written a book called The Island of the Colorblind. And it's mostly about this disease that natives contracted where a lot of people were colorblind in the island. So he was sort of investigating this phenomenon. But in the book, he writes a lot about the islands, Rota in Micronesia, about the cycads and ferns and weird prehistoric trees and weird plants and strange ramifications. So I thought, okay, well, will I make pictures of plants or ferns? I thought, no, why don't I try my hand at Cliché-verre? So the botanical gardens in New York sent me a lot of specimens of these ferns. So what I did was to ink 8 by 10 pieces of glass, press all these ferns in various stages, wait a minute, re-ink it, make a kind of a make-believe botanical hell, I guess. And then once the glass negatives were done, I had them scanned at a very high-end scanner to produce the prints. So these are some of the pictures that came out for this book. And this is a copy of what the book looks like. It's hand-printed, it's hand-stitched, it's gorgeous. And my images are in it. So this is a number of those images that resulted. They're not exactly representational, but they have a ferny feel. And I love working with this, ink, getting my hands dirty, pressing. When I didn't like it, just wash it off, try it again, just like a printmaker. So, for this project, I rethought about Cliché-verres, but not with anything in particular like ferns or anything that existed. So I thought that it would be interesting. This is, while the Goodyears had no idea what the hell I was doing, so it's like, okay, well, I'll do this, I wanted to make at least the idea of a landscape that felt somewhat real, but not too real, and that had some sense of winteriness. So over 2 weeks, I had a lot of glass, especially 3 pieces of 8 by 10 glass, where I would work the surface with ink, scratch it, bite it, whatever, and I came up with these, and I'm going to finish with these. So this is one plate, second plate, and third plate. And that's the piece that's hanging in the show now, except for the lines. I decided to take away the white lines and make it seamless. And it's about 8 feet high. And it felt to be like a waterfall of a kind. And this is the last piece I made, 3 pieces of glass, worked over time, left, middle, and right. And that's the last piece in the show. But it's now giving me ideas for the next thing. In less than a month, I'm going to be going to Giverny, where Monet painted. I'm an artist in residence for 3.5 weeks in the gardens. So I'm bringing my tent, but I'm also going to buy glass in Paris and ink, and we're flying our scanner over there, because I think that the idea of maybe a landscape, a reaction to a real landscape with these Cliché-verres could be really productive. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. Maybe we can turn the lights on.
Yeah, let's bring them on.
Oh, this is lights. Harsh. Wow.
Yeah, could I ask you about these? Uh, you made negatives with the.
Yes, I took a piece of 8 by 10 glass, in this
Yeah.
case, 3 pieces together, put together. And then on the glass itself, I took ink and scratched it, worked the ink on the glass itself. And when it dried, I took the glass with the ink on it and had them digitally scanned so they became files that could be printed again.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And so these are the prints.
These are the prints that
Yeah.
resulted from that process.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I know it's, sometimes I just assume that, of course, everybody knows this shit.
When you're making your images in the tent, the surface that you're on obviously is kind of half the situation. Do you look for that specifically, or do you kind of manipulate that surface at all? What's the process of you deciding on both what you're looking at and the surface? Describe that.
Typically, for instance, I'm doing the Golden Gate Bridge. That's the place. It's finding surrounding areas that have interesting ground. For instance, grass doesn't work very well. Snow doesn't work at all, which to my surprise was shocking. There was no, it has crystals, so it doesn't bounce straight up. Yes, I look for ground that's interesting. It doesn't have to be sexy either. You know, a lot of it changes in dramatic ways. So yes, I look for, but I'm not gonna bring, you know, sand to Wyoming, you know, I mean, you know, if that's what you mean. It's basically, we try to find a ground that will have an interesting connection. I'm going Thursday, this is a little bit of a plug, but to New York City, CBS morning show. Yeah, I'm doing a tent picture of the Brooklyn Bridge. And now we're discussing the Brooklyn side or the New York side, but somebody's making a movie on the Brooklyn side, so now we're changing to the Manhattan side. And then some people are taking pictures of the ground on Manhattan to see if that ground will work. So it's important. Yeah, it's really important. And the more messy it is, the better. Because then it's the Brooklyn Bridge and then these weird marks. Okay. No fair, you know too much.
I'm curious about how long, what do you do during those long exposures?
It's changed. My early camera obscure exposures were 8 hours long. It's because it was film. That film in low lighting is very slow. So 5 to 8 hours long. But now I'm using only digital technology. From 8 hours and 5 hours to 5 minutes. In fact, you think, okay, well, he's like dealing with electric, you know, okay, you know, right, oh. But that picture of Old Faithful, which is a 2-minute exposure, would not have worked with film because it needed a 5-hour exposure. What we would get is 5 hours of weird eruptions and we just would not show up. So now, because the time is slower, because of digital technology, I can get specific moments in light and time. So it's actually worked quite well. It's also nice to see it in the laptop and go, okay, we got it. With Matt, my assistant is somewhere here, so, and it's nice. Also, if we're doing a landscape and we get one and we like it, but then Matt says, you know, there's a nice cloud coming. You know, okay, let's wait and do that one. So it's been actually, it's opened up a whole new set of pictures.
Abe, thank you so much for your remarks, which are quite remarkable, if I may. One of the things that I love about the exhibition is the notion of perception. And I love the fact that the title, A Mind of Winter, has been selected. And of course, it comes from Wallace Stevens. And it's a reminder that there are so many different media that you are bringing into this space. The handmade, the photographic, words, and of course, music. And
Oh, yeah.
I wondered if you would be willing to say a little bit about the musical component of this exhibition, which represents yet another part of your artistic vision.
Well, I think I'm a closeted musician. I mean, I don't know how to read music or anything like that, but I've always loved, and especially after meeting Elliot, and he's like, check this out. And I was like, you know, electronic music, Steve Reich. And so I've always had music on one end of my pendulum, visually and musically. So I don't know specifically what the music does, but it does help me think about proportion, space, just the way light can influence a note or something. The idea of some of these landscapes feel like very the way a cage piece might read on a sheet of music. So I played something for the gallery, and it's not my greatest forte, you know, but I do like people like Satie and people like that. So I tried to do some music that was not musical, but sort of like notes being sprinkled here and there. So it's not where I'm going to get the Nobel Prize for. Anybody else? Yes. Linda, that's good to see you. Of cold? Mm-hmm. Well, first, art can take harshness out of anything. Yeah, the quiet, you know, snow and what happens when it's 10 below, 12 below, the way things creak and all that, it really does put you in a different plane. And that's why the show is entitled A Mind of Winter, because, and I have to thank John McKee for the Wallace Stevens introduction. But among the poets that I know, it's the most philosophical and asking good questions. But really, to understand winter, he's suggesting that you must have to embody it, you know. It's a deep idea that it's not me and the winter, but it is the winterness inside. So I tried to think about that when I made the pictures, but it was mostly cold. Yeah. I actually liked it. In fact, I was surprised how much I liked it. Patagonia helps, you know. But I like being out there with Matt, and you know, you feel a little bit like those early explorers or early photographers who worked a lot. You know, I teach a graduate class every fall, and a lot of people applying now these days are guys in their pajamas with their Photoshop stealing pictures from other people. So it's nice to be outdoors, kind of feeling the cold, and I still like the old-fashioned. If you want to know about pine, go and see it. You know, something like that. Yes? Oh.
You do for the recording, please.
A feisty one. Turn on. It's not on.
We'll get you the other one. Sorry.
That's one in every crowd.
Is this working? Yeah, this. Who is that guy?
Go ahead.
If you had to choose at this point, and from this point on, only use one medium, one way of exposing light onto paper, would you choose this and get rid of your cameras, or would you keep your cameras and get rid of that?
Boy, that's a really good question. I feel like I'm definitely flirting with photography.
Flirting with what?
Cheating on photography a little bit by doing this kind of work. But I'm really also brought back to early Fox Talbots, photograms and pictures that began with these makeshift negatives. So it feels like I'm still using the past to inform this, but I'm liking this way of working a lot.
There's a lot more love in this work than in the other work.
Oh, okay.
No offense.
Let's see.
But it's all
You
there.
must be a painter.
Pardon? I'm a painter who knew a lot of photographers, and I also know that good art always has a tune in it. Always.
A tune?
Music.
Oh, I see.
It's always underneath it. If the music isn't there, then it's just stuff.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you for your frankness. Okay, maybe on a lighter note.
Have you ever thought about painting emulsion on a surface and then using your camera obscura technique to actually imprint on the glass plate, on a glass plate?
I haven't. I mean, I've actually, at one point early on, I thought I would paint an emulsion on the wall inside a camera obscura and then expose that and develop it. But the results are not that interesting. It's sort of out of focus, and it's more heady than physical. So I like when optically things look quite good. I may get to it if I can figure out the... I've heard of that. Boy, wasted my security. Anybody else? Oh,
I'm coming. Sorry.
this better be a good one.
Or was it?
I'm sure it's not going to be a good one after that, but I'm just curious, I love seeing your early pictures. I love the Brunswick townies. And if you were a critic, or what do you think of those early photos? If you were a critic and you looked at it, I mean, what?
The early photographs.
Yeah,
when I was a
yeah. I
student?
thought some of the early photos were.
I think they're good. I mean, I'm not sure that I would be known for those pictures necessarily, but I think that they actually fit in a continuity. And someday I may have a show of those images. So I like them, but they're juvenilia. I mean, it's a young man kind of trying to be weird, you know, as we all tend to do, you know. But no, I like them. Thank you, because I do like them. Yes, Elliot.
I just wanted to say that you claimed that you had no musical skills or whatever as a student, but I think you're shortchanging yourself.
Oh.
At Bowdoin, you composed some really cool tape music, did some wonderful electronic pieces, and I think they're related to what you've done, you know, in your other life, in that you took a technique that was pretty well known and had already established a kind of routine for putting together things, and you turned it on its ear. Oh. You didn't use it the way anybody else used it.
Oh, wow.
You found interesting ways of getting at it. So you're
My father.
You're more of a musician than you think.
Thank you, Elliot. Means it. Thank you all for coming.